again to discuss things.
Ready to go ahead and get started?
I am all set.
Okay. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Part 2. Joining me today is the Wolverine of YouTube, because he's on like all these different teams, but he still has enough time for his own series, Steve Baxi.
I am the old man Logan Wolverine. I have aged remarkably.
Yeah, exactly. Someone left a comment on the Killing Joke video saying that Steve Baxi with long hair looks really weird. And that made me laugh.
It does look kind of weird now looking back on it.
Yeah, and every time I try to get you to shoot a new intro, you just don't.
I keep forgetting. You know what? The moment we're done tonight, because we're filming 2 shows, the moment we're done tonight, I'm going to like grab a soda and film something, and then we're going to make an intro.
Okay, sounds good.
I don't know what yet, but it'll be something.
Okay, I'm down. I'm going to hold you to it. Anyway, Steve, what are we talking about tonight, though?
All right, so tonight, Ian and I are both running down our top 5 cartoons or animated series, pretty much anything that is animated that was released, as long as it's not like a American comic book adaptation. So like, this will not be a list that's like Batman the Animated Series, Justice League, Spectacular Spider-Man, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because I mean, honestly, it would go, Green Lantern the Animated Series, Batman Beyond, Justice League, both Justice League and Unlimited, and then probably animated series and Superman the Animated Series. That would be the list right there for me.
Yeah, mine would be pretty much the same, except that I'd Beware the Batman in there.
Yeah. So it's just there's really no reason to do that. So this is a top 5 animated series from each of us that are not American comic book superhero stuff.
Right.
And so this should be a fun list. Who wants to go first? Do we want to...
I made an extensive list of just-in-case possibilities, because I know we'll have a little bit of crossover, so you can go ahead and go first, and then I will mention something that may have been on my list, but I'll take off since you already mentioned it.
Oh, do we want to start with honorable mentions or number 5s?
I guess number 5s. I guess honorable mentions will come at the end, because I don't know what I will cross off yet. Just depends on what you put on your list.
That's totally fair. Okay, for me, I had a really hard time with this because I love a lot of superhero shows, and I like animated shows. I just don't watch a ton of stuff that's not capes.
Sure.
But one animated show that I really, really do like is Star Wars: The Clone Wars.
Nice. Okay.
It is.
I remember that you liked that show.
It is hands down the best thing set in the prequel era of Star Wars.
I agree.
No debate.
I agree.
Like
that and the Plagueis novel.
And no, I've kind of like, I don't like the Plagueis novel very much.
Oh, interesting. We'll have to review that at some point.
Yeah, I did one with JID 2020, whatever, fucking Joel Davis. Fuck people with the goddamn complicated numbers in their names. I did a video with him, and like I did not like that novel. But anyway, no, the Clone Wars show though, I find is just absolutely fantastic. I like things about the Plagueis novel, don't get me wrong. But the Clone Wars show I think is absolutely fantastic. It's a little iffy in the first couple seasons, but after that it starts to really take a noticeable turn. It gets a lot more serious, and it does things that are just really, really interesting. And it takes characters to places that they wouldn't otherwise get to, and it just makes the movies better, which is the job of anything in the EU at this point, is to make the prequels better.
Right.
So yeah, I just love that series for multiple reasons. I particularly like the way in which they show how combat works in the Star Wars universe, because we kind of just get space battles in the original trilogy, but as far as like proper intergalactic combat, it's really interesting because there's a whole series of episodes where like the first couple episodes are about Anakin getting through a blockade in space, and then there's an episode, once they get through the blockade, there's an episode where Obi-Wan has to get through like upper atmosphere, basically dogfighting air combat, and then once they're on the ground they have to complete a ground mission. So it's just this really interesting take on what a proper military operation would be like in an intergalactic war, and it was really, really well thought out. And then just like stuff like that, the fact that the clone troopers are racist against droids, and they have like, you know, soldiery nicknames for droids to demean them. Like, it's just a nice, subtle little thing that I think is genius. They call the droids clankers, and like, there's an episode where one clone trooper, like, keeps battle droid fingers on a necklace, and it's, like, considered contraband. And I'm like, holy shit. That's actually really dark when you think about it. So there's, like, a lot of subtleties of that show that I just love.
That's a show that at first I didn't like, and then over the years I've really warmed up to it, particularly when you get to like season 3, when it opens with the 2-part like clone cadets and ARC troopers. Because after a while I realized I don't love this show for Anakin and Obi-Wan. I love this show for everything it's expanding on during the Clone Wars itself. It gets really good towards the end. Do you like those lost episodes that were aired on Netflix?
Yeah, but I think it's important to remember that those, like, that they were clearly in the middle of the final season, of another season, not even a final season. They were clearly in the middle of another season when the Disney sale went through. Yeah. And so it's not really lost episodes, it's half a season that they decided to publish in a weird way.
Yeah, I always wish that we got, like, some kind of proper cap off to it, but I guess we're getting novels now, so maybe that'll help.
Yeah, Alex and I did a video on this entire series, so you guys can go watch that if you want, but, it's just, you can really tell that they weren't finished, and there were a number of plot threads that they never got to wrap up that were set up throughout the seasons of that show. And so my thing was, we started the Clone Wars with a movie, why not do a cap-off movie? I think that would have been really brilliant.
It would also fit with their marketing, because there were points where, like, there were clearly like 4 or 5 episode arcs throughout individual seasons, and they started releasing some of those like 5-6 episode chunks on iTunes as unofficial movies.
Oh, interesting.
So it would have been in the cards to get a movie. I guess they just didn't want to, or they would get, Disney was like, no. I'm not entirely positive on what the situation is. I know the Darth Maul stuff that didn't get resolved got turned into a 4-issue comic that was kind of boring, mostly because it's clearly like 20 episodes condensed into 4 issues.
Ah, that's disappointing. Yeah, just stuff like that. The Darth Maul thing in particular, there was like this creature that was, its like hide was resistant to lightsabers, and it was killed on Coruscant, and like Palpatine, arranged for it to be like moved secretly to a testing location, so they could have done something more with that.
Yeah.
There are just all these little things, and obviously Ahsoka is now getting resolved in Rebels, but she at the time hadn't been resolved at all. So just stuff like that they really could have wrapped up. So this, and that's kind of why it's this high up on my list, is because it is never properly ended as an animated series. And that's, I can understand the back door, back room, behind the scenes stuff, but ultimately it still does hurt it on the whole for me.
That's fair. The big reason it wouldn't be on my list is that I think the 2003 Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars stuff is far superior, but that's just because that's more to my taste.
Fair enough. I really like Anakin and Obi in this series, and I don't like Anakin in that one. Like, this series, this is what Anakin should have been.
Yeah.
And it's just better. It's a better take on that character. There's, even in that first movie, there's this scene where, he's he's got the clone troopers and Ahsoka following him in the dogfighting ships as they make a run to go blow up some fucking rebel thing, whatever. And the guns, the turrets, are just taking out like half his squadron, but he's being able to avoid everything because he has the Force, and he's telling them, guys, just stay tight, follow me. And Ahsoka gets on the comms with him and goes, Master, you might be able to do it, but they can't. And part of being an effective leader is being able to understand what you can't ask someone to do.
Right.
And then he turned back and he actually learned a lesson. And so I really like that take on it. Anakin is overconfident to his detriment, but not in a way that makes him an asshole, just the way that he can't comprehend that someone can't keep up with him. Stuff like that I really, really liked.
There was definitely like more of like a classic hubris tragedy element to that version of Anakin, that if that series didn't have to abide by the prequel films, it probably would have been a much more satisfying prequel downfall for that character.
Certainly. It would have been a real stab in the back to George Lucas, but I would have loved for the writers of the Clone Wars to get to redo the prequels.
It would have been really interesting.
Yeah. And, like, everyone tells me, oh, well, George Lucas would feel too alienated from the franchise. He had the chance to, like, accept fan criticism, and he decided to make Jar Jar Binks the most important character in the entire series. So, I have no sympathy for George Lucas.
It's true.
Yeah, so, I just have a lot of feelings, complicated feelings on the Clone Wars. I really like a lot of what it does. A lot of people complain about General Grievous, and I think that is a fair complaint of the series, because, I mean, he gets beaten by the Gungans, which is just a real shame for anybody. So I can understand that.
It also simplifies a lot of what made him interesting in the Clone Wars Ostrander comics, and that's the big thing with that show, is that, like, it's good on its own terms, but a lot of, like, EU fans like me had a hard time swallowing it because of how good the Ostrander comics were.
Gotcha. And I know that's the weird thing, is when Disney threw out the entire EU, this was the exception.
Yeah.
And this was the thing that contradicted everything else in the EU, which are like 90% of the EU, which was hilarious.
They made quite a few changes, especially that first season. That first season was all about making sure people in the EU were on board because they were going a different way.
Gotcha.
That's a good pick, though. That was fun. I might go back to it because it's on Netflix.
Yeah, that's how I watched it, and I couldn't get enough of it. Let me just talk about one other thing with it, though.
Sure.
A lot of people don't like this series of episodes, but I really did, just for this one moment that we get with the planet that is the embodiment of the Force.
Yeah.
A lot of people,
light and dark brother sister team.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't like that, but the moment that really sold that whole arc for me was Anakin being shown what he becomes, and just the way it's animated. The animation on that show isn't great. It's still pretty early for doing a full CG show and trying to make it look good. So, like, I was always kind of turned off by how blocky the beards looked and stuff. The beards and the hair always looked really, really squared off. But Anakin being shown his future, the way they animate that, it's like this beautiful 360 of this smoky murkiness, and you hear all these iconic moments from the original trilogy, and you see Alderaan getting destroyed, and then you just have the clouds just form into the Darth Vader helmet, and you hear the breath, that iconic Darth Vader respirator breath, and Anakin just fucking falls to his knees and is completely broken by that moment. I adored that, and once again, if that had been the character in the movies, they would have been so much better.
Agreed. Yeah. No, I like parts about that. Those particular episodes I know were written by a guy that worked on Lost. So there's a little bit of influence from that show bleeding into those episodes.
Gotcha. Okay, what's your number 5 pick then, Steve?
Okay, my number 5 is The only CG animated series on here, so it's interesting that we both went for that as our number 5 spot. But my number 5 is something that I just finished rewatching earlier this month. It's Transformers Prime. Um, so Transformers Prime was a show that had a really awkward place in Transformers canon because we had the Bayformers movies, and those are awful. Everyone acknowledges, even if you enjoy them to a degree, they're just really bad representations of Transformers. But because of those movies, there was a certain aesthetic that everyone just had to run with, and Bumblebee had to become an important character just because. And so this show premiered on the now defunct Hub Network, which this was its headline. This was the big show that they were kept touting up as like, this is the thing that'll put us on the map. And ironically, it wasn't that. It was My Little Pony. But when it premiered there was lots of hesitation because one, it was really, really dark. There's a moment in the first 5-parter where one of the Transformers is beating up a Decepticon, and they're robots. And so obviously censors don't give a shit about robots. You can do whatever you want with them. But we acknowledge that these characters are human in their minds and the way they interact. So Bulkhead takes his hand, shoves it inside of a Decepticon, and tells the humans to turn their head away because he's about to rip out its heart. And so like it was a very dark show, which was part of the reason people were excited for it, but it also looked like it was reminiscent of the Bayformers films because Optimus looks exactly like he does in those movies. And Bumblebee looks exactly like he does in those movies. So there was a bit of hesitation going into it. When it gets going, by the time you start that show and you open with Darkness Rising and you see Cliffjumper die in the opening of that show, it instantly became my favorite Transformers thing ever. It's part of a canon of novels and video games. There was a video game called War for Cybertron that came out back on the 360 and PS3 in like 2010 that basically chronicled the events of the Cybertronian War, and there's a sequel game to it called Fall of Cybertron that builds everything into Transformers Prime. But because those games, this show, and a novel were being written at the same time, they're all in the same canon, yet they all contradict each other.
Oh, of course.
They only had like general events. They didn't have like specifics or anything. So everyone just kind of abandoned the video games and novel, and they just went for Transformers Prime, which only got 3 seasons. The 3rd season kind of became almost a spin-off of itself, and then they got a movie. And the 3rd season was called Beast Hunters because Beast Wars is the big Transformers thing. And from there, they got a movie called Transformers Prime Beast Hunters Predacon Rising. And that ended off the series, and they got like a sort of sequel show called Robots in Disguise, which airs at 6 a.m. on Cartoon Network, and it's made for like 7-year-olds. So needless to say, it has a very annoying production history, and so it, by all accounts, it should have been a failure, and it's not because it's fucking brilliant. It's one of the best things animated wise I've ever seen, and there's just so much maturity to all of the characters. This is a show where, again, the Autobots are the underdogs, where they're constantly losing men, but it's all about like, it's almost like trench warfare. It's almost like the Autobots are huddled on this one particular corner, and all they're doing is like living in their own recycled parts and feeding off energon scraps and trying to fend off their post-traumatic stress with each other. The fact that RC loses 2 partners, the fact that Bulkhead gets disabled for like 10 episodes, the fact that Bumblebee had his voice box ripped out by Megatron, so is both afraid and has like this vengeful streak against him, and then Optimus is almost like a Superman type character where like every time he does something, he does it in the most badass way possible, and then every time he loses, it's like it doesn't even faze him. They get to their darkest hour at a certain point, and that's a repeated Transformers line, where everything has gone to shit, and then they get this thing called the Star Saber, which is literally the most powerful weapon in the universe. So Optimus pulls it out, splits a mountain in half, sends the Decepticons running. 10 minutes later, it's destroyed. Everyone's basically crying about it, and Optimus just keeps doing his job. Like, it's what he is the best incarnation of Optimus we've ever gotten, and he's clearly very aged and tired, which fits with Peter Cullen's voice. It's showrun by Ortsy and Kurtzman, but they don't really care. So most of like the show running duties went to Jeff Klein, who's not a guy I know from any other show aside from Transformers properties. But he's fantastic, and the show, all 3 seasons, builds to a very satisfying yet very depressing ending. And if you want to understand why people love the Transformers comics as much as they do, why they're annoyed by all the ruined mythology in the films, watch this, because they do some incredible sci-fi stuff. Unicron is literally the center of the Earth. And so if Unicron wakes up, the entire planet has to be destroyed because he has to transform outside of the shape of the Earth. Like, it's one of the most interesting sci-fi spins on Transformers ever. I love it.
It sounds really neat, and Transformers is just a thing that I've never really gotten into. Later this week there will be it's interesting you bring it up, because later this week we'll have an episode posted on a Transformers fan film, so, and I don't have much to say about that. Just, no, but it's interesting that it's in CG, and you said it's really well animated, because if I'm not mistaken, wasn't a Transformers series the first 3D animated cartoon show?
Probably Beast Wars.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was it.
Yeah.
Like the first, ongoing 3D animated cartoon series. I know it was one of the first was one of the Transformers series, so.
Yeah, I think that was probably the first. It shows though, so if you go back, that first season is really rough and it never looks particularly good. But it's well written after you get to like season 2.
No, I'm just saying. So it's interesting to see how they kept with the 3D thing, and I think 3D is a good choice for Transformers. Like I say, Clone Wars, it's in 3D, but it doesn't really need to be, and it's kind of to its own detriment because like the beards, the hair always looks really blocky. It's a little bit better in Rebels at this point. But that was always something that kind of turned me off to it, and why I didn't get into it initially. But Transformers, it just makes sense, because you have, cars and just mechanical things always look better in CG anyway.
Yeah, the actual transformation sequences and stuff look really good in this show, and there were human characters that are important for most of Season 1, but by the time you get to, like, Season 2 and 3, they become really non sequitur. They don't really matter, and even when they show up, it's to develop the Autobot characters so they don't matter as characters unto themselves. So even though the humans look kind of bad, all the stuff you get with the Transformers makes it worth it. One of the animation sequences I love about it is there's a thing at the end of Season 2 where the Autobot base just gets demolished and you think Optimus is dead. And so you've got like these layers and layers and layers of destroyed metal all over the place. But they're able to animate it so that you can distinctly see Optimus's hand coming out of the rubble, but at the same time, it looks just like horribly rusted, decayed metal, and it doesn't feel like it's out of place. Like, it feels like the entire scene is naturally there, and all the metal is scattered around it. It looks almost live action.
Oh, nice. That's cool. Yeah, I'm not a Transformers fan, but if that is on Netflix, right?
Yeah, that's partly why I got a chance to rewatch it, because the whole thing is on Netflix now. I think Predacons Rising is on Netflix, but at least the first 3 seasons are, if not that movie.
Yeah, I might consider checking that out. Transformers just never been my property, though.
That's fair. If this doesn't turn you into a Transformers fan, then it's safe to say that it's definitely just not for you.
That's fair. Okay, well, I guess we'll move on to my number 4, which is Futurama.
Oh, I completely forgot about that show.
Yeah, I fucking love Futurama, dude.
It's so good.
Yeah, on my most recent watch through of Futurama, I was simultaneously watching through Star Trek, the original series, and that made it so much better. Because, there are tons of Star Trek references in Futurama, but, to levels that you will not even believe, because, there's an episode where Zoidberg and Fry fight over the right for a woman, right?
Yeah.
But and so it's that very Star Trek Spock fights Kirk scene, but they even play the same music. and so there's all kinds of stuff like that, and that made it even better. And Futurama is a show that just it has so much love for its fans because its fans had so much love for it. And so there's just, they got brought back twice. They did so much good work.
Yeah.
That it's awesome to see. And now I believe all of it's on Netflix, and it's just super fun. I grew up watching Futurama constantly because when it went off Fox originally and got put on Adult Swim for like years, they would play the series over and over, every single episode again, for years on repeat, without fail. And that's what got it brought back. And then it was really sad because once it got brought back, then it lost its Adult Swim run, which is what I think helped make it a big deal again. And then it kind of lost its footing again and got canceled, and then it got brought back again. And I don't know. It's a shame that happened, but it's such a good series, and it's got just such an endless potential for storytelling. It's got so much heart in a way that Family Guy and Simpsons never really... Like, Simpsons used to have heart and then they lost it. Family Guy had heart for maybe the first season and a half and then just immediately became a sellout.
Yeah.
But Futurama never lost its heart. Every time it was brought back, it like, really, you felt it all the time. There's that one episode with Fry's dog that it's hard to watch. It's hard to watch that episode. Just that ending scene is so goddamn sad. And there's a lot of stuff like that where it's Fry's an idiot, but he's a lovable idiot, so you do feel with him, and it's really fun. And then it's also a really smart show. It's a show that if you know certain things about scientific and philosophical theory, that it gets really, really funny with jokes that that most people won't understand. So, I'm trying to think of a good one. This was from one of the newer episodes where they're doing the whole evolution debate, and they go, and like he goes, oh well, there's a missing link between man and ape that science has never been able to prove.
Oh, yeah.
And they goes, no, we've totally been able to prove it. And they keep going through like every step until they get to like the one missing specimen on the whole thing. And that's like proof that creationism is real and all this stuff. So that was really funny. But then like what was really brilliant about that episode too is they don't like completely discount that. They just discount it scientifically, because after that they go to space and the professor uses nanobots that kind of go out of control and take over and evolve on the planet into different kinds of machines until the point to where they evolve into humanoid sentient robots who believe that robots evolved naturally. And he goes, well, from your perspective, yes, but I'm the one who created you originally. And so it's like, it doesn't completely discount the idea that some type of intelligent design may be conceivable. It's just beyond our ability to understand, so we shouldn't bother with it. It just takes care of how silly it is from a purely scientific standpoint, and I really like that. So it's a really clever, respectful, yet intelligent way to go about these situations, and I quite enjoy that.
My favorite contrast between that and something like Family Guy is, with Family Guy, you very quickly get a sense for what type of person Seth MacFarlane is, where like he's so ingrained in how he sees things that even if you agree in places, he treats every other side as idiotic. And yeah. Futurama doesn't do that. Like, just with that episode, like if you did that episode on Family Guy, it would be a cutaway joke where the creationist is a moron and like Brian's right because whatever. And like,
I mean,
sorry, go ahead.
Well, there's an episode, like, to your exact point, there's an episode where it's Brian and Stewie time traveling, which is some of the best episodes of Family Guy. But they're not time traveling, actually. They're hopping between alternate universes. And they get to a universe where the European Dark Ages never happened. But they just say it as the Dark Ages never happened, and it's like this super futuristic universe where, like, you know, people are flying around in jetpacks and yada yada. And that's Seth MacFarlane's whole thing of, oh, religion has stupefied the society and stuff. I'm like, motherfucker, Europe was in the Dark Age. Islam was in a golden age. And yet we are still at the level of technology that we were at. That's a stupid, like, completely Eurocentric view of history. And that's the problem with that is, and of course, Futurama doesn't pull shit like that. They understand, like, history in ways that other people don't. And I really like that about that series.
My favorite...
So yeah, that's...
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say my favorite episode of that show is still the season 4 finale, The Devil's Idol... what was it called? The Devil's Hands or the Devil's Idol Hands, something like that, where Fry gets the robot devil's hands. Mm-hmm. And he uses that to make music. And just... the commentary of that on, like, talent and the parallels to stuff like Amadeus and even, like, some fun in-jokes with like, the music he plays comes from Isaac Asimov. And, like, that was the episode that made me think, yeah, this is a brilliant show, and if I keep watching this, I will keep finding new things to love.
And I think that was the original series finale, if I'm not mistaken.
Probably. I don't remember when it got cut off. It was around that time, though, yeah.
Yeah, it was either that or the next season, I imagine. There's, like, the really heartbreaking episodes are the episodes you can tell where they thought they were over.
Yeah.
And there's, like, all kinds of stuff like that. There's the episode where, like, the final series finale, for the moment, is a Fry and Leela, like, you know, are stuck in time. They're the only two that are able to perceive time naturally while everyone else is stuck in an instant. And so they live out their entire lives. They grow old together, just walking across oceans and stuff. And then they get to the end, and the professor comes back, and he's found a way to restart the universe or whatever. And they go, "Are you ready to do it all over again?" And they take each other's hands and go into this tunnel. And it's just a really beautiful, sweet, heartfelt moment. And there's just... that shit's all over Futurama. It never lost its heart. And it never... like... it was never not funny at the same time.
Yeah.
Everything about that series was great.
There were good episodes and there were bad, but it never lost its identity.
I mean, there are episodes that aren't as good as others, but I really struggle to think of a truly bad episode of Futurama.
No, I agree. It's another one of those shows where the concept's so perfect that you could tell limitless stories in it.
Yeah, and it's just too bad that it never quite got to the same... and I don't know, maybe it's a blessing in disguise that it never got to the same level of popularity as The Simpsons and Family Guy. Because maybe it's a good thing that it didn't go on forever. And it, like, the problem with Simpsons and Family Guy is the problem with all sitcoms. They ran out of ideas. You can't run out of ideas in Futurama, but at the same time, the people creating it might run out of ideas themselves.
And importantly, Ken Keller is the guy that wrote every supposed season or series finale. So, like, there was always... the team was always there in a way. Like, if the show kept going, people would have left. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's the thing about that show. And it just has... it has memes. That's just great. Just Futurama memes are the greatest thing ever. So yeah, I love Futurama. It's really clever, really fun. It's not afraid to push boundaries on certain things, and it's really hilarious. Bender's a great character. I love the characters. I love the universe it sets up, and just some of the dialogue or what? Not even dialogue. Some of the one-liners are like better jokes than anything Family Guy has ever said. Like, don't get me wrong, I will give Family Guy credit. It makes you laugh on occasion. It's just, in isolation, it can make you laugh. But Futurama just makes me laugh so much harder in isolation. Because there's this moment where an episode opens with just, you see the Planet Express building, and it is like shaking, and you hear the professor screaming in pain, and he goes, "Somebody make it stop! God, Buddha, Zeus, one of you, do something!" The building shakes and he screams some more, "Satan, you owe me!" That's really funny.
There's that episode where Bender becomes God, and he's like, "It's time the entire world learns about our peaceful ways by force."
Right?
I love
yeah.
that show.
Yeah, and then the movies they did before they brought it back the first time were really fun too.
Those entire series of movies just became their own season, didn't they?
Yeah, that's how they're on Netflix, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Anyway, what's your number 4, Steve?
Okay, so I completely forgot about Futurama. You know, that show is great. My number 4 is The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. This is a show that just recently started replaying on Boomerang, and Boomerang has a great like late night lineup of like Dexter's Lab to Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy to Kids Next Door to Foster Home for Imaginary Friends, Courage the Cowardly Dog, like all that classic stuff plays for most of the night. So I got a chance to go back and watch all of that lately. This is a show I remember when it first premiered, and I really didn't get it. I was watching it. The first episode is that pilot short, because Cartoon Network used to have like this series of every year or so they'd air like a collection of like 5 to 10 minute shorts, and a few of them would go on to become series. Most of them would get paired together, and then usually something stuck or it didn't. Of all of those, I think Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy was their most successful. It used to be paired with Evil Con Carne, and then they got separated. It used to be called Grim and Evil. And particularly with the show, I didn't get the joke of the Grim Reaper loses a game because humans cheat, and now he becomes their slave. And then as the series went on, I kept watching it, and somehow it just always got stuck in my head, and I kept going back to it. And after a while, I discovered just how much I really loved what the show was doing. This was my first introduction, or my introduction period to dark humor, of like cartoons being extremely creepy in ways that you wouldn't be able to figure out unless you go back and watch it again. Of like, there are jokes in the show that are like Rem and Stimpy level, just utterly disgusting. And the fact that a censor was able to let it go is interesting. But then there were other jokes, like the idea of like Grim gets turned into a human because he's sick. And then you see as that episode goes on with like women hitting on him and stuff, like it's that idea of like the Grim Reaper of a Christian sense of like, oh, the flesh is evil, and so your life is going to suck if you're a human. But then immediately you come back to another episode where you find out, well, yeah, human beings are evil because they're worse than death. That they will literally bind you down and try and make sense out of you, to the point where you are driven mad. And like, there are so many interesting running jokes between how Grimm sees the kids versus how the kids see Grimm, and this notion that him trying to inject logic into why he's their pet is the thing that's the craziest. And then after a while, he just gives up. He just sits on the couch and watches TV every episode. And then the jokes get spawned from that, where like death becomes nothing but a distraction from life. And I was listening to the showrunner talk about a lot of this stuff, and I never put it together until he started saying it. It's a really, really smart show. There are points where it kind of loses its footing. There is that final season that you can tell is the final season because for some reason Mandy's hair is like a different color. It's much brighter yellow for some reason. And in that last season, it gets a little wonky, but even then there's a great episode there where like Van Helsing comes back to try and kill Dracula because Dracula stole his girlfriend, who then turns out to be Erwin's grandmother. And so Erwin is the child of a vampire and a mummy. Like it's just a really fun, quirky show, and it really built not only my sense of humor in a lot of ways and why I love things like Shane Black films, but it also sort of built my taste in music, because there's a lot of like jumping back and forth between like metal and punk and classical music, and it's always in reference to something really depressing, of like Grimm having a score that's deeply classical, but it's also it's taken from like operas, and so it's all about death. And then you listen to certain episodes where where Mandy is listening to like death metal music, and like there are songs in the show that are just called Darkness, where people are yelling at each other, and then stuff like that really blends well. And I figured that like if you distill this show down, you get very specific aspects of my personality, and so it's very hard to like not put it on the list.
Gotcha. I never realized how deep that show is. I vaguely remember it. You know, I remember some of the, I remember the basic premise. I remembered it was one of those short pilots that got extended to a series. I remember not loving the animation, thinking it was kind of simplistic.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize it had that much going on, like, under the surface. And it's really impressive that you can get away with stuff like that on a kid's show. Because I just think it probably went over the producers and the censors' heads.
That's the thing, right? Like, it feels like the way that show was being made, the only way you'd be able to tell how dark and creepy it is if you sat down with the intention of trying to figure out if it was dark and creepy. Like, you'd already have to make the assumption that it's creepy.
That's funny. No, I never realized how complicated that show is. As you explained that really makes me want to get into it again. Because I remember watching it here and there. It wasn't like one of my favorites, but I do remember that. And it was a fairly unique premise. And it's one of those things that the whole idea of challenging death has gotten kind of popular in media over the last 100 years or so. There's like one film that did it, and it was an early film, and so it just kind of got expanded through there. Nostalgia Chick did a great video talking about this. But yeah, that's really interesting. I never realized how deep that went. That's really funny.
I've always toyed with the idea of like writing something on that show, but it's really tough to get like good looking downloads of it.
That's too bad.
Yeah, it's annoying. I'm not sure even if we have like a complete series DVD pack. We might have only gotten like chunks of it released.
I hate that.
I know, it's awful. Even when Boomerang re-airs it, they skip episodes that I remember happening, and you can only find some of those episodes online. It's really irritating.
Weird. Okay, I guess we'll just move on to my number 3, because I unfortunately just don't have too much to say about it, because I don't remember enough about it.
Sure.
We'll go to my number 3, which is Archer, the FX series. And I should make a note, there's technically speaking only one quote-unquote kids show on my list. The rest of the stuff is actually more aimed towards at least teenagers or adults. So, yeah, and it was Clone Wars that was the quote-unquote kids show, so keep that in mind. Archer is my number 3, though, because goddamn, I love this series. This series is so ridiculous. It is the ultimate spy show in like concept, and also it is the perfect continuation of C-Lab 2021 and Frisky Dingo. It is made by the same people who did those series on Adult Swim, and they got over to FX, and they just get to run wild and play around with the spy genre now. And my god, do they just go to town. It is hilarious. It's like, it gets so dark, and it gets so just ludicrous that you cannot believe what is happening on screen. And it has, what I love about it is its very, very strong sense of continuity. Because in a lot of animated shows, again, I'll go to Family Guy, you'll have something crazy happen in an episode, and then it just never gets mentioned again. And, like, this would be a big deal. Like, even if you're just using it as a joke, the characters should remember this about the character that did a thing and mention it to them again, but they never do. In Archer, they do. Constantly. Like, there are running jokes, and then there's just like, this is now a thing that is part of the show forever. And it's hilarious. And the other thing I really like about it is all of the action scenes in the show are actually pretty legit badass action scenes with just kind of like a crummy animation, purposely crummy animation. But the action scenes are legitimately badass to the point where if you really wanted to, you could go in and dub over the original dialogue and you would have just a really cool spy action scene where they're talking a lot back and forth. And you could make it like serious dialogue if you really wanted. Particularly the second season, there was a snowmobile chase where like Archer's going through the woods and he's got like this girl holding on to his back and he's getting chased by like black ops guys with laser sights on snowmobiles and he has to like keep dodging and weaving them and he's like he only has so many bullets left in his gun so he can't just spray and pray. And he's just and so he has to find these really clever ways to take them out. But then there's also like really, really funny jokes. Steve, help me out. What's the secret identity of the She-Hulk?
Jennifer Walters or something like that. Jennifer something.
Yeah, Jennifer Walters. I think that sounds right. So he's making fun of Lana for having really big hands. And he calls her the Hulk, and she hits him. And he's like, God, Dr. Bruce Banner, I didn't mean to make you angry. And she hits him again. He's like, okay, fine, Jennifer Walters. And she looks at him, and he goes, the secret identity of the She-Hulk. And she hits him again. It's just really... Yeah, there's just really clever dialogue like that. And there's like... Sometimes it's just a little gross, like, Archer becomes king of the pirates at the beginning of one of the seasons. Don't ask me how, but he becomes king of the pirates on this little renegade island, and like the secretary or whatever comes up to him, and he's in bed with two women. The secretary comes up to him and is like, "Are you ready to discuss the pirate business for today?" And he goes, I'm naked, hungover, and in bed with two beautiful women covered in literally every bodily fluid. So yes. It's just like, ew. What the shit? And all the references to all the James Bond movies and stuff, and not only James Bond, there's a lot of science fiction spy stuff in there too. Like Archer's nemesis is Barry, and he is basically the $6 Million Man. He has been replaced with cybernetic parts, and he wears the red tracksuit all the time and stuff like that. So that's really funny. But by far the characters and their interactions with each other are just the best because these are the most it's somehow this company hired all of the most terrible people on the planet, and they all work together and are just awful to each other constantly. And Krieger's my favorite, and it's possible that he's a clone of Hitler, and it's so ridiculous, and I love it to death, and it's so funny and clever and smart, and it's the best thing ever. I love Archer to death.
That's awesome. You keep telling me about it. I'm gonna watch it now just because I need something else, and that sounds hilarious.
Yeah, a lot of it's on Netflix, so it's really worth your time, and it is just very, very clever, very smartly written, and it's one of those shows where it actually really works to binge it because of the strong sense of continuity.
That's awesome. I'll definitely check it out. I know that there was talk from the showrunners about making a live action movie, and they want John Hamm to play Archer.
Oh, wow, yes. Oh my god, yes, that'd be perfect. He looks exactly like him. I guess the only other thing I'll talk about is, it has that same animation style as C-Lab 2021 and Frisky Dingo. And it's intended to look kind of crummy just to make it a little bit more fun. And there's even an episode at the end of, I want to say, the 4th season where they go to C-Lab, and it's
awesome.
Yeah, so it really is a show that respects its roots, and it's clearly the same people working on it. Now I just need Killface to show up for an episode, and I'll be so fucking happy, because as much as I love Archer, Frisky Dingo was really good too. It just unfortunately doesn't. Yeah, it just didn't have enough for me to put it on this list. Whereas Archer, they've really gotten to stretch their legs and have a lot of fun with it.
Archer definitely got a run. I remember Frisky Dingo getting canceled after like 20-something episodes.
Yeah, it only got 2 seasons, which was unfortunate because it was just really fucking funny. Like, I remember the scene where Killface is in the hospital with his son. Like, they're waiting in the ER, and Killface has, like, a fucking lead pipe through his shoulder, and he's just sitting there all calmly, and his son has, like, a paper cut on his finger, and his son, like, mumbles something, he goes, "Yes, I know you're gonna go first. Yes, I know nothing hurts more than a paper cut. You're gonna go first. Don't worry about it." Like, my God. He's just sitting there, and he's, like, dead serious about it with the goddamn pipe through his shoulder.
There's so much of that. There is an episode where, like, his entire insides are gone, and he's just sitting there in the hospital reading a magazine.
Right? Yeah, so that entire animation team is just great, but Archer is, I think they've finally found their footing, and really are just going all out with it and are having too much fun. How about you, Steve? What's your number 3?
All right, my number 3 is Cowboy Bebop. I was going back and forth on a lot of anime to put on this list, and it came to the point where I'm like, most of them are just going to have to be honorable mentions because a lot of what I love about them can all be summarized by just talking about Cowboy Bebop. For one, Cowboy Bebop is the gold standard for dubbing, with the exception of like sporadic additional voices every now and then of characters that are just there for exposition. Every character sounds perfect. Every character sounds like this is their natural voice, and they make a really great effort to make sure that everything that you're hearing is authentically an authentic American translation of what the original Japanese was, and not to the point of like sanitizing any of it like Funimation does. It's everything about that show in English is just as good about it in the original Japanese. And of course, some of it just works better because it's made, if you listen to the Japanese, because it's their voice actors and such. But I mean, you can watch either and be a fan. There are some things where like you should go back and watch the subs for like Dragon Ball Z. But for Cowboy Bebop, it's just perfectly dubbed. The music is fucking gorgeous. That jazz intro, like
Tank is great. I love Tank.
Tank is great, and then like the saxophones that play throughout like more plotty episodes, like when you go to Jupiter Jazz and Phase in a bar, and you just hear that saxophone guy going off. And then at the end of Ballad of Fallen Angels, where Spike's falling out of the church, and you hear like that fantastic operatic music with a little bit of a jazz influence to it. It's beautiful. It's sexy in every way an animated show can be, and it's got some of the most interesting characters of any anime. Everything I love about people like Edward Elric or Yusuke Urameshi goes into Spike, because he's the ultimate just fluid character where like everyone around him has like this deeper worldview of how things are meant to be explored and what discrimination. I can't speak tonight. What discrimination is. Discriminations, like what like determinism is, and like whether or not everyone is just built to be, everyone it just has to be out for themselves, or they should help people. Everyone's got like a deep philosophy, and Spike is just Spike. Spike's the guy, like when everything goes to shit, he's not going to go look for a reason as to why the universe is this way. He'll say something like, I guess I should have emptied the fridge out or something. Like, he's an extremely laid back and fluid character. But a lot of it's also just a guise for like how much shit he went through in the past, and how we're able to like build around who he used to be without ever doing like we never do a moment in that show where like for 10 episodes straight it's a story arc going through the past shit that Spike had to go through. It's always just this situation reminds him of something, and because of that, we're able to build a complex character. There are no unnecessary flashbacks. The episode where Jet goes back to like his hometown and meets his old girlfriend is fantastic. The parallels between him and between Spike and everyone is great, and I love Joss Whedon. Joss Whedon is my favorite writer, director, guy working ever. And Firefly is great and Serenity is great, but it never got to finish. And if you want to see Firefly done a million times right, watch Cowboy Bebop. It's just a gorgeous show. And it's the thing that can, I think for most people, if you want to sell them on anime, Cowboy Bebop is one of the first things I would go to.
Yeah, I've heard about Cowboy Bebop a lot. I remember seeing the intro play on like Toonami or whatever, or not Toonami, early Adult Swim before they got to the bumps, you know. Yeah. Like I remember they used to play this, and it's just something. I remember trying to watch it, but I don't think I ever caught it at the first episode, so I never quite got into it. And it's a pretty short series, if I remember correctly.
It's only like 26 episodes in one movie.
Yeah, so I never quite got into it, and like everyone's told me about it, and I worry it's gotten to, you know, the Godfather level for me at this point.
Oh yeah, where you want the hype to eclipse it.
Yeah, so I'm just like, I don't know what I'm waiting for, but I don't think I'm gonna go to that series anytime soon, unfortunately, because I've heard too much good about it, and I would just rather be the guy that hasn't watched it as opposed to the guy who watched it and is like, guys, why does everyone like this so much? It's kind of a piece of shit.
The way I recommend you look at it because of that hype is not to binge it, because there are episodes that are extended. Like Jupiter Jazz is a 2-parter. There are episodes here and there, like towards the end. I think it's called Folk Blues or something. It's like the second to last episode. That's also a 2-parter, and it builds on some of the stuff we saw in the past. The thing we get with Ballad of Fallen Angels feeds in a little bit towards the end of the show, but it's not a plotty show. It's not 26 episodes. This is a novel. It's very much just every episode is its own independent story, and through the course of exploring these independent situations, you learn more about the characters. So if you're gonna watch it, I'd recommend just like extremely passively while you're relaxing, watch like one episode a week or something and get yourself used to what the show is. And at some point you'll find yourself loving it. It's not about like going into each episode expecting it to be a perfect script. It's something about the way the show collectively builds in your mind without ever giving you a multi-episode arc that makes it genius.
Okay. And it's one of those things that it's just a show I've never gotten into, and so I might end up doing it that way. We'll see. No promises, though.
That's fair, yeah.
I've seen bits and pieces, clips of it, and it does have a really cool style to it. Like I say, that opening intro with Tank playing and the I remember very clearly the silhouettes on like the colored different colored changing backgrounds. Silhouettes are something I just love, both in animation and live action. There's something about just the silhouette as an art form that I find really, really fascinating. If you couldn't tell by the dancing Twilight girl, I love silhouettes to death. So that is something that did always stick with me about the series, but for one reason or another, I just never got around to it, I guess.
Which is
what
fair.
What can you do?
I think you might end up liking it, but of course you just have to make sure you separate yourself from the expectation. Like, it's my number 3, but don't read into that.
It's my number 3, but as we'd all know, I hate everything, so therefore It's still awful.
Yeah, if nothing else, the thing that might immediately sell you on it is just Spike Spiegel as a person, where like he's your kind of stereotypical anime character who's good at everything but is extremely comedic and in some places kind of dumb. But there's a freshness to it, there's a maturity where like the show doesn't have any of the stereotypical anime exaggerated expressions. And so when Spike does something dumb, they treat it like it's a human being that did something dumb, and like there's a very natural like human expectation of everyone. So like you get the anime humor, but it never physically degrades to that. So it has a
interesting.
different feel to it. It feels like you're watching a drama as opposed to an anime, a cartoon.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that is actually a really good selling point for me. Okay. Well, I guess we'll move on to my number 2. And I was gonna say, hey, we did an episode on this too, and you can go check that out. But right now, because YouTube is some bullshitters, you cannot go check that out, at least at the time of this recording, because we got a copyright strike for that episode. And that episode is our review of The Boondocks Season 1. I love The Boondocks. The Boondocks is a fantastic animated series, and this is both a good thing and a bad thing. The first season is the best season of that series, because you can really tell that they never thought they'd get a second. And so they threw everything into that first season. And then it just happened to get ridiculously popular, and so they were able to continue it. And it's never bad, it's just not quite as good again. But yeah, I love the Boondocks. I love the comic strip of the Boondocks. This is like one I had to clarify with Steve whether or not it would count as cheating, since it started as, a newspaper comic.
Yeah.
But really, that little thing was just to keep Marvel and DC shows off this list.
Yeah, we don't want to resort to like stereotypical Batman animated series is the greatest thing ever. That was the whole reason for that caveat. Stuff like Boondocks and Peanuts and stuff is fine.
Yeah, and Boondocks is it's a really brilliant show. It's something that maybe is a little too stuck in its era, but I don't know how much I can make that criticism when we're still dealing with the same issues.
Yeah.
Like, it's been over 10 years since the first season of the Boondocks, and we're still dealing with all the same issues mentioned in that series. It's just the cultural references aren't as current. Like, there's an R. Kelly episode in that first season talking about, R. Kelly's trial and everything for the sex tape. We're still dealing with issues like that. It's just not related to R. Kelly anymore.
Yeah.
So, like, everything about that first season is still just as culturally relevant as it was back then. It's just not as... It's just the particular examples they're using aren't.
I mean, particularly
but
when
otherwise,
you look at its use of like tropes and stereotypes against like black communities and stuff, and like it's very much subtly about like racial identity and stuff, and particularly now when we debate things like Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter, it's a really interesting thing to go back to.
It really was like disappointing, I guess, and this is a weird thing to talk about, but it really was disappointing that series ran into production hell and ultimately ended up being done after the 4th season, when that 4th season came out right before the Black Lives Matter movement took off. Because I would have loved to see Huey Freeman's take on Black Lives Matter. And, now we're never going to get it.
Well, I mean, particularly when, like, the last episode was called The New Black. Like, there was already some building towards that. Yeah,
it was just, like... First, the 4th season is mainly a parody of Breaking Bad, which is fun. It's not great, but it's fun. It's still, like, you enjoy the characters, so you enjoy it. But we're right on the cusp of that, because Trayvon Martin had happened... And Michael Brown had happened, but they were clearly already done writing and probably done animating the series by the time that happened.
Right.
So we were right on the cusp of the Black Lives Matter movement when it really, really took off. And it just would have been interesting to see Huey Freeman's take on that. Because we got to see Huey Freeman's take on a bunch of other things. Most importantly, probably the first African-American president. Which is, I'm not impressed. That was the thing, like that's what that whole episode, a black president, Huey Freeman. It's about like, oh well, everyone else is so excited that we have a black president now, but Huey knows nothing was really gonna change. And he was right.
Yeah.
that's what that whole series was. It was just so on the nose. It was so smart, and it has so much goddamn heart. It gets you. Like, even when it's ridiculous, it can get to you still, and that's beautiful. Like, there are moments when Huey will, like, break down and give a speech. Like, that Martin Luther King speech is simultaneously hilarious and goddamn impactful.
Yeah.
Like, my friend CJ at work, he says he can never hear what Martin Luther King or Huey Freeman are saying after Martin Luther King says, "Will you ignorant ass niggas please shut the hell up?" He can't hear anything because he's laughing too hard. But, like, I've watched that episode so many times, and that is the perfect critique of where, like, not just black culture, but popular culture has taken us. That it's about anti-intellectualism, and it's particularly insidious, or was at least, is getting removed from, is particularly insidious in black culture. And it's great to see someone address that. And that's just fucking goddamn, that was so... it just hit me in the right place, and it was great to see. Because it's not just black culture, it's all minority culture. But it's through the lens of a black perspective, and that made it great. That's what made that series so great. The Martin Luther King episode is one of the greatest episodes of anything animated or any episode of television. I adore that episode to death. Do
you watch Black Jesus at all, or no?
No, I haven't watched any of it.
Okay,
I've heard great things about it. I just haven't had a chance to sit down and watch it because, I think, I'm pretty sure that show premiered once Haley and I moved out here, and we don't have cable. So.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure. I haven't watched any of it. I just know that he writes on it, so it might be just as good. But I've heard people say that it's a bit of a disappointment, so I wasn't sure.
I've heard that it's really, really funny. I haven't heard anyone talk about it being, like, super socially impactful, but
right.
You know.
Okay, that's fair. I love that you picked that as your number 2 because Aaron Magruder has said specifically that part of his inspiration for that particular strip was both Samurai Champloo and Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah, I know he's a big anime fan, and that's why they wanted to do anime with black people that actually look like black people and not, Jim Crow.
Yeah.
And so that was really cool to see, and it is just really fun. Like, the animation in that show is pretty damn good. The fight scenes are really cool. It's just full of references, like, particularly to Bruce Lee movies.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's an episode in the first season, and again, I love the first season so much. That's the one I bought, and I watched through, like, 3 or 4 times. The first season has that episode where Huey goes to fight Oprah's bodyguard, and he's like this, Afro samurai guy right out of Enter the Dragon, and he has that line from Enter the guy in Enter the Dragon has that line to Claw, where he's like, "Man, you're straight out of a comic book." And the dude that Huey fights looks at Huey and he goes, "Man, you straight out of a comic strip." And it's just really fun. Like, it's really self-aware series. And then they created new characters for the series. They didn't just, make the comic strip into the show, which I really respected. They brought Uncle Ruckus in, and they did a really great parallel between him and Granddad that I found really fascinating.
Uncle Ruckus was the big thing for that show. Like, everyone quoted Uncle Ruckus back when I was in like middle school and stuff.
Yeah, Uncle Ruckus was a huge deal. And he was just like, we almost got an Uncle Ruckus movie, of course, and so just that was really fun. And I particularly like the character interactions because Riley is just as smart as Huey. But he just has embraced this culture of ignorance. Ignorance is cool. It's not cool to be smart. This anti-intellectualism. He has just completely embraced that, so he doesn't want to be smarter.
Right.
And so he makes fun of people for being smart. And I really like that dynamic of Huey just being, like, perfectly contrasted with almost everything that he hates about his culture. And then you have Robert being perfectly contrasted with how he, in some respects, views himself. Because, importantly, Robert left to go live with white people. And that's like, because he wasn't recognized. He wasn't appreciated for what he was doing for the community. Because he was a civil rights activist, and he was a Tuskegee Airman, and he was like every single important thing that black people have done in the 21st century. Robert was there, but he left because he didn't get the recognition he felt he deserved.
Yeah.
And so Ruckus is a reflection of Granddad, and I love that. Brilliant series. Yeah, brilliant series, and on top of all the interesting political and social stuff, it's fucking hilarious.
I love, on the small-minded side of me, I love all of their paintball gunfights.
Yeah.
That's so much fun.
And, like, just... What, I'm trying to remember the line that Huey has in that first season episode, where... Man, it's gonna drive me crazy. But he has, like, this really, like, dark and you know, mysterious line as he, like, you know, like, limps through the hallway carrying a samurai sword. And then it just starts this epic-ass fight between him and Riley. And it's like, it's this perfect, like, representation of how siblings view their battles. But it's, like, taken completely seriously. And that's just real. And then, like, it ends perfectly with Granddad just being like, boys, what the hell? That's really funny. Like, they all legitimately almost kill each other, and he just comes in, boys, what the hell? I love that show. So much fun.
I wish it was still rerunning on Adult Swim. It isn't. That's really irritating.
That's too bad. Yeah. First season's the best. The other seasons certainly have their moments, and it never stops being fun, though.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's so much of that show and just like fond memories of it, but no, it's great. I'm glad that you picked that too, because I completely forgot about that show too.
Yay! I picked things that Steve forgets about.
Okay, well, my number 2 is... This and my number 1 go back and forth a lot. They're both things that stick with me, but the reason it's my number 2 is because I don't ever feel the need to rewatch it as often as I rewatch my number 1. So my number 2 is Samurai Jack. Samurai Jack is one of... Or for me, it's the best work of animation we've ever gotten, just with the way it's styled. But then, just more than that, it's the best thing Genndy Tartakovsky's ever done, and he's done lots of great things. Like Powerpuff Girls is great, Dexter's Lab is great, Symbiotic Titan's great, his Clone Wars is great. I haven't watched any of the Hotel Transylvania movies, but I hear they're good.
Yeah, surprisingly so.
It's Adam Sandler, so I wasn't expecting it, you know?
That's what everyone said.
That's exactly it. It's Adam Sandler. Why should I bother? But he got his start working both on Tiny Toons and Batman the Animated Series, which is really fun. Like, he didn't do anything major for either of those shows. But very quickly, he started getting popular with that and The Critic and Two Stupid Dogs. And I think he did an episode of Space Ghost, but I'm not positive. And then Dexter and Slabs, where he got popular. Samurai Jack is the thing he did immediately after he left Dexter's Lab, which is partly why those last couple seasons are so different. And Samurai Jack was a show that not only hit the ground running, but a lot like what you said with Futurama, it's the show with infinite story possibilities. I didn't always believe this, but I used to talk to Alex about Samurai Jack pretty often, and the one thing that he really sold me on is you can do literally any story you want to with Samurai Jack, which is what makes it so genius. Every episode is a different genre. It's a different convention. It's taking different influences, both from comic books and film and TV and everything, and it never gets stale. There's never a single episode of that show where it feels like they just phoned something in. Like, you can tell very clearly with stuff like Batman the Animated Series, where these are the episodes that they loved doing and worked months on, and these are the episodes that they just had to get out because they needed to fill time until they wrote the script they really loved. Samurai Jack is not that. Samurai Jack is literally every episode's a different thing, and every single one of them is a passion project, and every person you meet will have a different top 10 simply by the nature of them having different tastes in different media. If you like the classic hard-boiled noir stuff, you can find 10 episodes of Samurai Jack that are like that. There's just so much variety, and it looks so beautiful, and there's so much fun commentary on storytelling as that show goes on, where like the start of it is very clearly like Frank Miller, Ronin, postmodern samurai stuff. And then you get to the ending movie that they made, which was basically a prequel that talked about the birth of Aku, and it's very classic, almost Greek mythology, borrows from Hinduism and everything. Like, it's all about building a mythology around that character, and then everything in between is just making fun of westerns or appreciating stuff by Kurosawa or having fun with things like Lone Wolf and Cub or or basically like Blade Runner style robotic aesthetics. And part of the reason I love the show on Cartoon Network as opposed to it going to Adult Swim is that Jack using a sword to destroy robots and being soaked in their oil is a very different metaphor than Jack just ripping people apart. Like the fact that everyone he fights is part robot, and that he's going back from an evil industrialized future to something that's more simple and about more concrete moral values, like his history in Japan, is very different than him just going around and chopping people up and seeing blood. And I always loved that network limitation made it all the more genius. There were things I go back to, and there's an episode of the show where fucking Sean Connery shows up. It's not literally Sean Connery voicing the character.
Oh, the like big burly Scottish guy.
No, it's not that one. They use that stuff later. But there is an episode where just fucking Sean Connery, exactly like he looked with the white beard and everything, is just standing there talking to Jack. And there's an episode where like he's literally in the Beatles' Yellow Submarine. There's an episode that's called Jack and the Spartans, and it's just 300. And it's gorgeous. It's one of the best animated things I've ever seen. Samurai Jack is something that I think you can watch not only an infinite number of times, but you can do infinite things in. And as much as I love the idea of it becoming a comic book, the comic never quite found its footing in that way, probably because it didn't have the right artist. It's a book that it's a thing that requires a very specific style, because it's a style that fits everything, as opposed to altering itself to look different for each individual story. If you like anything on the planet, if there is any niche thing in the world that you like in genre fiction, I promise you I can find you 2 or 3 Samurai Jack episodes with that.
How many seasons did that get?
4. All 13 episodes.
Oh, wow, okay. Yeah, I remember watching Samurai Jack and thinking it was really cool, but I guess my criticism for that is the action scenes, and this was intended, the action scenes go on forever. Forever! And they wanted to, because like the guy was like, oh, there's just no show with enough action for me. I'm like, well, Michael Bay has a job for you. Like that was his whole intent when making that show. And I'm like, well, good for you, but god damn, I need some kind of rest to like feel like there are actually stakes, because that show basically just at points became Jack cutting through hordes of robots over and over and over again, and that did get a little stale for me after a while.
That's fair. There's an episode where there's literally no dialogue. Jack just rolls into a town and robots start attacking him, and the whole episode is him trying not to die. Mm-hmm. Which for me was fun, just because I always fell in love with like the way they were able to like shoot action in multiple ways and like break it down into panels, and like it's a show that the better your TV is, the larger it is, the more there is to appreciate. It was just so ahead of its time that like you could put up a Samurai Jack episode on a theater screen and it would look good.
Okay. I don't know. It's one of those things I haven't gotten back to in a long time. Now, here's a question for you, though, because I do remember they had the first season on Netflix for a little while, then I think they took it down as opposed to adding more.
Yeah.
Do you consider Samurai Jack a cartoon, like American cartoon, or do you think it's like kind of this weird thing where you could almost call it an anime?
I think you can make the case for it being anime. I would be more comfortable with calling it a cartoon because it was made by a guy that wanted it to be a cartoon and did a lot of things that he was contrasting with American animation and American cartoons. There is anime influence there. There is some interesting anime stuff and anime storytelling and stuff found within it, and lots of anime have Western influence, but Tarkovsky never sat down and said that this is the East showing the West how to do a show.
Gotcha. No, I was just curious because like it had a very particular style that seemed like it was taking more from Eastern things than Western things at times.
There is an episode that's very heavily inspired by like Hayao Miyazaki, and there is definitely anime stuff sprinkled throughout, but I think there's enough of everything sprinkled throughout. Like there is an entire episode where Jack works for a bunch of 1920s Chicago gangsters.
Yeah, I remember that one actually, and like they steal a diamond.
They steal a diamond, and he has to fight like weird diamond avatars, and then he has this thing where he has to blow up a guy's house, so he takes him and all of his cats and hides him on a boat. Like it's great.
Yeah. Again, it's a series that I remember in some ways, but I just never got super into myself. So I know that it has a huge fan base though, and deservedly so, because it was very striking. It was very memorable. It was not like nothing else on television at the time, and it really deserved to be watched. I'll give you that.
Yeah, I'm glad it's getting a revival. I'm glad it's getting like an official ending. I can't wait for that.
That'll be really cool. It's too bad the voice of Aku died.
I know. He was great. He did have an apprentice though that was trained to sound just like him. So we're in safe hands.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, I guess I'll go on to my honorable mention, and I'll try not to talk about this one for too long.
Sure.
This would have been higher up on my list, but I needed to have something, and I think I just like Clone Wars a little bit more. My honorable mention is Invader Zim.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I really like Invader Zim. I was sold on that series from the pilot, and it was just ridiculous and fun and crazy and just a little bit disturbing. And it had that great perspective on what humanity looks like from an outside perspective. And that was really funny. Like, I remember hearing the voice casting director on this, and she was like, I had people audition by seeing how well they could scream. And you just from that alone, you know what kind of show this is. And it's just so disturbing and creepy and not even funny at times. Just fucking weird and legitimately bothersome. And that's great that they got away with that on a kid's show.
Another one of those shows that's extremely short-lived and was always attempting to come back.
Yeah, and like just Johan Vasquez just is so anti corporate America, blah blah blah, that he never wanted it to come back. So
yeah,
what can you do? Oh well. I saw a tweet from him recently where he's like, "Good Invader Zim news," and then he just like posted some unrelated news about some other goddamn thing, and he goes, "Oh, and also Zim will never be back on television." I'm like, wow, dick.
He's just trolling you at that point.
Right?
That's not even funny, man.
Yeah. So I don't want to talk too much about Invader Zim. It's a good ass series.
Yeah.
You should watch Invader Zim if you haven't watched Invader Zim. Steve, you had a whole list of honorable mentions. What's one of yours?
The big one I want to mention, because obviously there's lots. There's like Full Metal Alchemist and Animaniacs and all that stuff. The big one I want to mention though is the Looney Tunes show, which was a Looney Tunes cartoon that only lasted 2 seasons. That aired on Cartoon Network back in like 2011, 2012-ish. Basically a Looney Tunes style sitcom, and I love it. I think it's genius. There's so much fun references to other sitcoms. There's an episode where Daffy pretends to be a lawyer, and Yosemite Sam comes in saying that he wants to sue Speedy because the pizza he ate was too hot, and it's almost line for line ripped from an episode of Seinfeld, where almost the exact same thing happens with Kramer, except it's a cup of coffee, and part of the fun of that show is just getting to see all of your familiar Looney Tune tropes get turned on their head. Like, it's basically a Daffy Duck show. And a lot of the times, the interesting thing about the fact that it's a Daffy Duck show is that Daffy gets like strong, coherent progress and character arcs. And Bugs is so comfortable in his suburban, wealthy home that he just invites problems because no one's out there provoking him anymore. I think that kind of stuff is genius. The two big traps it had, though, and part of the reason it's not really on the list, is the Roadrunner Wile E. Coyote sketches in CG just were not very good. They stopped making them after a season, mostly because they just weren't using the rules anymore. They weren't following along with how those shows, how that skit was supposed to go, and so it just got more and more preposterous. And then
I don't know. I really like the one where Wiley actually caught the Roadrunner. That was hilarious to me.
I don't even remember that one. What happened in that one, just besides him catching him?
Well, like, there was this, like, mystical glass box that he put birdseed in, and then the Roadrunner just runs into it. And so he's like, oh my god, I did it. And he, like, takes a selfie of him having caught the Roadrunner, and then he tries to, like, get it out, and he can't get to it now that he's finally caught him. And that was just really, really funny. I felt it perfectly followed those rules, but...
That might have been the last one, though, because they stopped making them pretty soon. I vaguely remember that one. That's awesome. And
one thing that did catch me about the Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner things, though, was there were a lot of references to Easy Rider with Wile E. Coyote. I don't know why, but, like, 2 or 3 times throughout that series, you see Wile E. Coyote riding the motorcycle from Easy Rider. Yeah. I have no clue as to why.
There's an episode where, like, Bugs is driving around on a motorcycle because he's got, like, motorcycle gloves, and Wile E. Coyote just drives up next to him, and it's an Easy Rider scene. It's great.
Yeah, I have no idea why he's in the Easy... Like, they keep referencing Easy Rider with Wile E. Coyote, but it was pretty funny.
Yeah. There was the Wile E. Coyote thing that I never loved, but then the other thing was just the Merry Melody songs that they had. Some of them are hysterical, like Daffy being a wizard, and then some of them are creepy and disturbing, like Chicken Hawk and Grilled Cheese.
Yeah, and then some of them are pretty fun, like Laser Beam. I quite like Laser Beam.
I like Laser Beam too. And then I also like both of the Chipmunk songs.
Yeah, those are fun.
Yeah, but that's my honorable mention.
That's fair. Okay, I guess I'll go ahead and go on to my number 1 then. And I don't know if this is my number 1 because it is really my favorite animated show, or if it's my number 1 because I'm watching through it right now. It's Dragon Ball and Z. Just all of Dragon Ball. I'll say here. I'm not sure about whether or not GT's included with that though.
It's not canon anymore, so you are retroactively safe if anyone wants to call you on it like 5 years down the line.
Fair enough. I don't know, just goddamn, it was such a good series, and like I'd never watched through all of it 100%. I'd watched through, I think, all of Z, but I never watched through all of Dragon Ball, and now I'm almost done with Dragon Ball, and god damn is it good. Master Roshi is one of the most fascinating characters ever.
He's great.
Like
yeah.
I had no idea about that. I remember him fighting Goku in order to make sure that Goku would be inspired to go out and get better and better. And I thought that was interesting, but I never realized just how complicated he is. And now I want to write Master Roshi, young Master Roshi fan fiction. It sounds crazy, but I've got, a really good idea for a Master Roshi fan fiction. And so I'm really into Dragon Ball right now. And I'm glad that I am. And I think it's such a brilliant show, and it's just really standing out for me. And it just does so much well. Goku, especially as a child, Goku's just incredible optimism and simultaneous stupidness, but in a charming way, is absolutely adorable. You want to fight me, kid? You must either be brave or stupid. I'm not either of those guys. My name's Goku. That's funny and adorable at the same time. Just shit like that I absolutely love. The perviness and stuff, it's a product of its time and of its culture, and you just have to accept that, or you just can't watch it. Just fundamentally, the perviness, all the jokes about panties, even when they're, censored for the dub, there's nothing you can do about that. It's a product of its culture and of its time, and it's played for comedy and shown to generally be a bad thing to behave in that manner. So that if you can't accept that, then you can't accept that, and there's nothing I can do about that. I'm sorry you're not going to be able to enjoy Dragon Ball. That's unfortunate. Not much else I can say about that. I love... It's also really cleverly written, for as much as Toriyama just doesn't give a fuck about continuity.
Yeah.
He does a pretty good job. Yeah. He does a pretty good job of actually, using I just have this thing, let me actually make it mean something. Even if it's a little contrived, it's still really clever. The perfect example of that is the power pole in Dragon Ball. Because he climbs Korin's tower and in the second series, or arc, or whatever, and that's really cool and interesting. Third arc, my bad. And that's really cool and interesting stuff. And then we need to give Goku, after the King Piccolo stuff, somewhere else to go to get more powerful. And so we reintroduce Korin's tower, and then we utilize the power pole to go beyond the limits of Korin's tower, and that's how we get everything with Kami. So it's a really clever introduction and use of that device, and there's all kinds of stuff like that throughout Dragon Ball. It's just used really cleverly. Master Roshi, I'd be willing to bet, was never meant to be much of a character. He was just meant to be this weird old pervy guy that would give them a Dragon Ball in order to see Bulma's vag. But they do stuff with him. They expand on him. If I remember correctly, the entire series was supposed to be over after the first time the Eternal Dragon was called. But then it just got so popular that it kept going. And so he did a really good job of writing it in such a way that it all felt natural, even though it probably wasn't.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely
everything that happens felt like it was supposed to, and that's great.
That was one of those shows where you go back and a lot of people say Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball feel like they have no connection, but I've always disagreed with that because I always thought it was interesting to go back and watch Dragon Ball knowing that Goku is an alien that's lost his death programming. There's lots of interesting stuff in both of those shows where they play up Goku's need to fight being more than human and how much of it is just part of who he is versus being not like anyone else. I love how martial arts heavy Dragon Ball is. I love how mythology heavy Dragon Ball Z is, and I love how Dragon Ball Super is a mix of both.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get to Super whenever I finish up Z, and again, I don't know if I'm going to go to GT or not. But
GT's not as bad as people make it out to be. It's a little boring, but there are parts of it that are good.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is I remember really liking some things about it, but I just don't know if it's going to be worth going back to or not. But what you were saying, it's not connected. It wasn't intended to be connected originally. But again, he's a really good writer when it comes to making new ideas integrate really well with stuff he's already established.
Yeah.
The power pole is a good example of that, but the whole Saiyan thing and the Ozaru and boy with the tail that's super strong, that all feels natural once you get to it. Like, that feels like the Superman ripoff explanation feels perfectly acceptable for how Goku came about. It doesn't feel wrong. It doesn't feel like it doesn't fit. And that's really cool. And just the way they integrate it and make it, they keep upping the stakes. And so, of course, unfortunately, we lose the relevance of a lot of the characters that we introduced in Dragon Ball. And Dragon Ball Z Abridged has had so much fun making fun of that fact.
Yeah.
I love when Tien shows up to fight Cell, and Cell's all like, "Oh look, it's Tien! Was Krillin busy?" It's like really fucked up. But yeah, there's
Krillin owned account is one of the best recurring jokes ever.
and it's been there since the very beginning. And so yeah, there's a lot of stuff in Dragon Ball Z where it's like, yeah, the Z fighters pretty much became obsolete, and that's why you had to introduce Vegeta, and that's just it's simple. It's certainly a symptomatic problem of how Toriyama wrote Goku as the kid who could never be defeated. Like, my joke for Goku's fighting style, at least in Dragon Ball, I'll have to go back to once I watch Z and see if this sticks with that, but Goku's fighting style is to get the shit kicked out of him for drama's sake, and then to get back up and completely hand the villain his ass. That is Goku's fighting style. And oddly enough, that really works with the explanation we get about Saiyan biology in Dragon Ball Z. That when a Saiyan gets the crap kicked out of him, they get back up and recover and are instantly much more powerful than they were beforehand. Like, that's such a just bullshit perfect right around that, like, makes everything that was kind of stupid about Dragon Ball work even better.
And I mean, part of the fun is that, like, he turns some of that into, like, a character arc when you get to, like, the Frieza stuff, and Vegeta is constantly asking people to beat the crap out of him.
Yeah, and, like, he kind of deserves it too.
Yeah. The one thing with Goku that you mentioned, part of the interesting, like, history of that show is Toriyama had specific plans that constantly got derailed because Goku is bigger than he will ever be. And in places that's great, and in places that's kind of depressing, because he wanted to write Goku out of the series when we got to Dragon Ball Z. Goku was not supposed to be the main character for more than, like, the first arc. But the fact that Gohan doesn't like to fight meant that audiences didn't like him as much, and so he had to keep bringing Goku back. Goku was supposed to stay dead after Cell, and then he came back anyway. And Goku has become such a massive cultural icon in Japan. Like, he's got his own holiday, he sells toys, he's in everyone's commercials. He's borderline public domain in Japan.
That's funny. I didn't know that.
It's great. Like, it's just, Goku is Japan's Superman. Probably, or maybe even bigger than that, because we can't use Superman without DC copyright. Everyone just has Goku everywhere. There's Goku lunchboxes and Goku brand pencils and, like, Goku brand food. Like, he's everywhere.
And that really does get to be a problem. Goku beats everybody, even when he shouldn't be able to, and it gets a little annoying, and it gets a little underwhelming at times. My biggest problem with Z, even watching through it when I was in middle school, was, okay, Super Saiyan 2, Super Saiyan 3, Spirit Bomb, Kamehameha Wave. Yeah. Just brief theory. I don't think Goku ever mastered the Kamehameha Wave in the same way that Roshi did.
How do you mean?
Well, like, his Kamehamehas are certainly more powerful than Roshi's ever were. But when you see Roshi do it, he got, like, physically bigger doing it. He was putting all of his energy into them because he couldn't do more than one at a time.
Right.
And I don't don't think we've ever seen Goku do that. I don't think we ever saw Goku get physically like double in size and just be completely out after one Kamehameha. So I don't think he ever mastered it in the same way that Roshi did.
And
just throwing that out there.
My counter theory to that is potentially that Goku mastered it in a way that Roshi never can, because the optimal Kamehameha wave would be the one that you can do repeatedly, and the only reason Roshi expands his body that way is because he has no other way to channel that much power. And Goku's a Saiyan, so he has an advantage on him and is able to do that more regularly.
Possibly. I kind of like mine more just because it gives Master Roshi an edge.
No, that's true. And I mean,
and it's like, it's just one of those things where Goku, like, to a certain point, he never needs to take an ability to its furthest extent.
Yeah.
Because he just has a natural edge. So, like, you know, Roshi does the Kamehameha, and Goku's like, can you teach me that? And he goes, sure, kid, but it'll take 50 years. And then Kid Goku does it in one try, and it's not anywhere near as powerful. I think Goku's just, as his power level increased, it got easier and easier for him to do them, but I don't think he ever fully put himself into them.
And that's another thing that Dragon Ball Super has retroactively been working on, because a lot of the emphasis in Goku's training and Vegeta's training in that show is not only not wasting energy, but like really mastering basic hand-to-hand combat in a way where you're not. It's the furthest extreme of what happened after Dragon Ball, where like with Dragon Ball, he got to the point where he was able to move without like a bell ringing, and so like he knows how to survey a situation. With Super, it's about how his entire body has to learn how to react without him thinking, and so a lot of his wasted energy is noted. Like he's constantly attacked by people or scolded by people that he likes to toy with his opponents and get the crap kicked out of him before fighting seriously, and that a lot of his attacks would be more powerful if he didn't see this as a game.
Yeah, and that's a great criticism of Goku too. So yeah, that really makes me excited to get to Super.
It takes a while to get going, I will say that though. It doesn't really get going until after you get past the Resurrection F stuff.
Yeah, but I still want to watch it through that stuff and see the movie and compare and contrast them.
Sure, yeah.
Last quick thing I want to mention, and I'll try to remember to leave a link to this below. Bill and Dylan on Demons from Outer Space did a really fascinating fan fiction kind of idea for a podcast where they talked about what if somehow when the rockets were sent off, Kakarot and Kal-El switched universes and went to the other's Earth.
Oh, so cool. That'd be so much fun.
Yeah, it was like, okay, so the Superman side Bill came up with, and it was kind of basically just, okay, Superman just takes the role of Goku, but he can't use Ki. That was Bill's whole thing, and it was like, okay, fucking Bill, whatever, it's boring. But then Dylan had the coolest idea ever, and that's that Goku became a villain in the DC universe. And I fucking love that idea so much.
Oh, that would be awesome. Yeah, because all he would want to do is beat the crap out of people.
Yeah, and like, so he'd just get his ass handed to him every so often by like a superhero, but then come back stronger. And that's just really fucking cool. Yeah, I really like that idea. Yeah, just throwing that one out there. So I'll try to leave a link to that, and you can hear them go into more detail about like how the stuff would work there. And I just find that incredibly awesome and a really neat idea. And so just wanted to make sure to mention that.
Yeah.
Okay,
cool.
Steve, what is your number one then?
All right, so my number one, there were two things I rewatch based on season. Every fall, I am in the mood to perpetually go back and rewatch Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel. And every summer, I am always in the mood to go back and rewatch this. And so my number one is Avatar: The Last Airbender. I'm not including Legend of Korra. I don't like Legend of Korra. I've seen that entire show through 3 times, and I always hated it. But Avatar: The Last Airbender was a show that it got started when I was in that phase of like everything sucks. I guess the phase I never
that you never quite got out of.
Yeah, like it was in the phase where I'm like, if you recommend something, I will hate it just on principle. And you know, for whatever reason, I turned on Nickelodeon because this is back when like a lot of like the more popular shows were about to end, and this was about to take their place. And it was like halfway through book one, we were just about to get to the stuff with the Water Tribe, and I don't know what it was, but I just got like possessed by it, and I kept watching and I kept rewatching it, and I saw every marathon of it. Avatar: The Last Airbender is the perfect hero's journey 3-act story. From everything to Aang's masters in each season, to everything with the mythology of the Avatar, to everything with his friends both coming and leaving, and Zuko's redemption, and everything with Uncle Iroh, also voiced by Mako and replaced like halfway through. Everything in this show is just like, you boil this down, perfect storytelling. The only criticism I've ever had of it is that he doesn't kill Fire Lord Ozai at the end, and the only reason he doesn't do that is because they weren't allowed to. So I always just cut it off as like, nope, he killed him. Because there's an entire episode about how, like, if he doesn't kill him, he's being selfish. So it's one of those shows that not only is it stylistically fantastic, but it's got this mythology where you can insert yourself into it and just come up with so many interesting things. Like the whole concept of firebenders being more based in Indian martial arts, and airbenders being Buddhists, and Water Tribe and Earth Tribe being more like Western and Eastern European or American, and like the notion that everything has some very true basis in reality, and that when you were watching the show as it aired, some of the showrunners would come on periodically and demonstrate for you the actual martial arts that got turned into bending moves. And that there is actually a comprehensive guide that you can go out and buy that breaks down, like, move for move, this is how in martial arts you control your energy, and this is how we use that to turn it into manipulating elements. The idea that the moon is a waterbender because it controls the tides, the idea that moles are earthbenders because they dig, the idea that dragons are firebenders because they breathe fire, that flying lemurs are airbenders because they can glide, like just this connectivity.
Let me ask something related to this, because I'm reminded of a legend, one of the tasks, or not the tasks of Hercules, one of the side things that Hercules did while fulfilling his tasks. He fought a giant who every time he was slammed down to the ground, he gained strength because he was from the earth or whatever.
Right.
Are earthbenders, like, is their fighting style more kind of wrestle-y, like getting... Yeah. Oh, that's fucking brilliant then. Yeah, oh, that's really cool.
When you get to Book 2 Earth, the way Aang meets Toph, his master, is that he goes into an underground fighting ring that's basically a parody of wrestling. That there's a guy called the Boulder that speaks in the third person and looks kind of like John Cena. Like it's very clearly inspired in like wrestling, and like not only like just like straightforward American TV wrestling, but actually like classic Greek rolling around in the mud kind of wrestling. The way they move, the earthbenders have this thing where they can climb up mountains, and the way they rock their hands back and forth, it looks really Greek. It's really cool. There's so much to read into just visually with the show that you could just spend hours and hours on like how things move and interact. And then there was just these great emotional beats. Like there's an episode that's just a bunch of vignettes called Tales of Ba Sing Se, where you go through each character and they're just looking for something or doing something. Sokka walks into like a poetry hut and starts doing haikus with people. And there's one of the shorts is Uncle Iroh going through the town, gathering supplies and stuff, and like helping townsfolk out and just like being his usual self. And the end of it, after he's helped all these people in the city, he goes out to the forest and he sets a little vigil for his son that died. And the episode was a tribute to Mako, who died just a little bit before this. But from the very beginning, you know that the reason Iroh's driven is because his son was in the Fire Nation army in the attack and in one of the attacks, his son died. And so Zuko's been his surrogate son since episode 1. And when you get to the book 2 stuff, where Zuko is like jumping back and forth between no hope and maybe he's going to become a good person again, you get to that point where he's just reminded of his kid, and it's heartbreaking. Every time he sings that song and you see like the tears coming out of his eyes, I break down because it's just so good. There's like critique of like actual Western and Eastern history with like Ba Sing Se having secret police. The idea that the entire Earth Kingdom is closed off so no one even knows there's been a war going on for 100 years. Like it's really cool. It's really fucked up in places, and I don't know. You just have to sit down and experience it. It really is kind of an existential journey.
That sounds really cool. That's the best sell anyone's ever given me for Avatar, because everyone else I've ever heard talk about it is just like, oh, but it's really neat, and there's like karate and stuff, and like people control elements. I'm like, I'm good. But damn, that makes it sound fascinating.
It's every character is extremely lovable and extremely interesting and have got their own quirks. From like episode 2 or 3, you will get to this point where like you will know exactly how a character sounds in your mind because their personalities are so distinct. It's a show that knew exactly where it was going from day one. And if you binge all 3 books, you'll see just how clearly everyone's character arcs were meant to wrap up in this place. And it really does great stuff with like Eastern ideas of like destiny and fate and reincarnation and who you are as a person as opposed to who you are in the greater scheme of things, without even once getting caught up in religious commentary. Like there's not a single episode dealing with like theism versus atheism. It's all just about people and culture and personal growth, and it's a beautiful show.
That sounds really cool. Yeah. Thank you for selling that to me, because that does sound like something I want to watch now. God damn, this was a cool episode. Just, hey, I want to watch this, and I want to watch this thing that you wanted to watch, that you watched. So, good episode,
Yeah, this was fun. Hopefully people are going to post some interesting stuff in the comments, because I'd love to know great shows that we completely forgot about.
Yeah, like, I was really worried about coming up with stuff for this, because I was like, I don't know, I don't watch that much animated stuff, because a lot of it is still directed at kids, and I don't really, I've come around a lot on anime since we did that episode on anime.
Yeah.
And I just didn't feel like I have enough of a connection to anime series to put that many on this list, and that's why, Dragon Ball showed up here, though. But yeah, I'm really curious to see what people leave in the comments below, working within the guidelines that we did of no Marvel or DC animated series. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great stuff that happens in animation that often goes unnoticed because, like you said, it is supposed to be for kids. But then some of the best stuff we see comes from like in-jokes that adults are supposed to get despite it being in a kid's show. That's part of the fun of something like Billy and Mandy, where like, it's a really depressing, nihilistic kind of show, but you don't get that unless you're looking for it.
Gotcha. And like I said, I just, a lot of it is for kids, and that's why a lot of the stuff on my list is more either teen or adult-aimed animation. Or adult-aimed series, right? Because Archer's very adult. It's rated TVMA. Clone Wars is more directed at teens. It's pretty kiddie in the beginning, but as it gets darker and goes on, it gets a lot more directed at a teenage audience. Futurama, adult show. Boondocks, more teen to adult show. And then Dragon Ball, again, teen to adults, not really for super little kids, because you don't want to teach little kids that it's okay for them to fight. Just general rule, probably not the best thing to teach young children. Look how Steve turned out.
That's true. Dragon Ball Z, the fight between Goku and Vegeta, where Goku goes Kaioken like ×3 and starts finally getting the upper hand against Vegeta, is literally my first memory.
That's so crazy.
I know. It's weird, and I don't know what it says about me as a person.
Bad things. Only bad things. Exclusively bad things. Okay, well, I think that'll do it for this episode.
Review topic
shit,
next week, right?
Yeah, I need to think of something. Review.
Do you want me to start some Jeopardy music for you?
Sure.
Oh, okay. I don't want to do that because copyright. But
Oh, fuck. God damn it.
all the
Goddamn
best things in life are copyrighted.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Death to the bourgeoisie. Um, What is something we could talk about? I know I had something.
I feel like
Fuck.
we always have like a list of 2 or 3 things, and then we always forget.
Yeah, man, I don't want to pick this because I don't want to cry. Fuck it, we're doing it. First story arc of Sandman, first 12 issues.
Ah, fuck, dude.
Yep,
That'll be fun.
yep. Everyone's gonna cry like a little bitch. Wait, first, I'm trying to think. When's the Sound of Her Wings issue?
Is that not in the first 12?
Um,
Let me actually double check real quick. I have all the trades. I'm pretty sure we could just jump onto any one if that's where your story arc is.
yeah, I just want to get through the opening story arc to where he meets death because I know the 13th issue is my favorite, but we won't talk about that one.
All right, Preludes and Nocturnes is 1 through 8, and I think Death comes into the next one. So maybe we have to start with the Dollhouse or the Doll's House.
No, we'll just do the first story arc, but like we'll do the first 12 issues. The first year of Sandman sounds perfectly doable.
Okay, yeah. The Sound of Her Wings is number 8.
Okay, yeah, that should be totally doable because I know number 13 stands completely on its own, and it starts to set up other things down the line.
When do we get to the Midsummer Night's Dream issue? Is that in the first 12?
No, that's after the 13th issue. I know.
Okay,
I think that's like issue 15 or 17 or something.
You know, that might actually come like after Season of the Mist. Now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah. We'll do the first year of Sandman. That will be our topic, because I've been thinking about Sandman lately. We're going to do a Sandman fan film. I'm recording that with Rasco on Monday, so it's going to be a very Sandman-heavy week of Geeky Gentlemen next week. But anyway, everyone, thank you very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I'm the Politician.
And we are your Geeky Gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.